performing in end-of-term productions, plays, or we used to sing the Handel's Messiah sometimes. And I remember one particular year we did a potted version of the Magic Flute. So that's really where it all began.
So where did your first professional break come?
It was a tour of a musical called Roar of the Grease Paint, Smell of the Crowd. It was written by Anthony Newley and Leslie Brickus. It was their sort of follow-up to Stop the World, I Want to Get Off. And unfortunately, we got our notice before we got to London, so we never made it to the West End.
Of course, you were in what was quite a revolutionary show at the time, Hair. You were in the chorus of that, weren't you?
That's right, yes, in 1969. Nothing had been seen like that at all before, particularly, of course, with that nude scene that everybody remembers the show for at the end of the first act. But it was very much a very different type of musical, the beginning, really, I think, of the musicals that we are now seeing.
You mentioned Jesus Christ Superstar. Was that your first meeting with Andrew Lloyd Webber and Tim Rice?
Yes, indeed it was. In fact, the funny thing was that I took over in that show as a member of the chorus, so I wasn't in it from day one, and consequently didn't get to meet Andrew and Tim until much later in Evita, of course.
How did you actually get the part in Evita?
Well, I basically went along for auditions as the same as everybody else did. I read as much as I could about her. Obviously, I knew nothing of her at all until I heard the album and sort of read the vague synopsis on the front of the album. And so I managed to get hold of a few good books about her and read about Argentina, again, which is something, a country I knew nothing of, and even less about the political doodah over there. So, and I also managed to find some old film footage of her, which I found very useful because in that sense I was able to put together what I had read about her and her character, along with the visual aspect of her, so I could get together with her mannerisms and the way she would walk or hold her head, that kind of thing. So I suppose that was, as much as I could do, really. And I think it was a hit because there were all the elements in that show came together. It was a wonderful score, a great story, great lyrics, wonderful direction, and of course the choreography as well was something that was very new and understated. It was all rather understated, and I think it was all those elements coming together that made it the show that it is.
One of the greatest hits of Elaine Paige has to be from Cats. How did you get the part of Grizabella?
Well, it was a strange story attached to that, really, because Judi Dench, who was meant to be playing the part of Grizabella, injured herself. She hurt her leg or foot or something, and she had to be operated on. And unfortunately, I'm glad to say she's well now, but at the time she couldn't, the decision was made that she didn't think she would be able to get well quickly enough to open in the show. And there were literally about 4 days to go. So Cameron Mackintosh, the producer, called me and asked me if I would consider taking over this part. And I said to him, well, what does it, involve? And he said, well, obviously it's totally different from Evita in that it's very much a cameo role. It's a very small part, and basically you have one number to sing. And of course, prior to this, to this phone call, the night before, I'd been driving home from somewhere about midnight, and I'd heard this wonderful tune on the radio, and I thought, wow, that's fantastic. And I got to my house before it had finished, just before the midnight news. That's how I know the time. And the DJ said, I'll play you the whole song in its entirety after the midnight news. And I went to my door to get in the house to tape it, because it was just the most stunning tune. No words to it, it was just a melody at that time. And there was this black cat hovering at my feet in front of my house. And I'd been living in this house now for some 4 years, and I'd never seen this cat. And it wouldn't go away, and I kept trying to shove it across my path, because it's meant to be lucky, isn't it? And anyway, eventually the cat crossed my path, said, great, fantastic. And I rushed into the house, leaving the door open, set the tape up, and taped the song. And the cat had followed me in. So I shut the door, and it looked a bit thin, and poor thing, obviously looked as if it was a stray. So I gave it a saucer of milk, and the cat stayed the night. And it was the following morning when I got this phone call about the show. And so I went and spoke to Cameron and met the director, Trevor Nunn, and Andrew, and discussed it, and decided to do the part. Only though I said to Cameron, well, what is the song I have to sing? And he said, well, it's called Memory. And I then realised, asking Andrew, that it was the same tune that I'd heard that night before. And of course, when the lyric actually came to be written, which was, about a day or two later, the first word of the lyric was midnight, so I just think that's a very uncanny story because of the black cat and the word midnight and the wonderful song and all the rest of it. So I was very happy to step into Judi Dench's shoes at such short notice because it was a wonderful, wonderful song to sing.